Welcome to Auntie K's, your favorite radical queer indigenous auntie, bringing you tarot every day. Hello everyone, and welcome to Auntie K's Tarot. I am here today to do a VR to Heather, and I will put the links in the description box. So this is a VR to Heather's recent tag, my I don't like animal decks, because I am here to confess that I have also been seduced by animal decks. I like people-y decks. And their faces have to express something to me. I contemplated whether Mystic Medleys belonged in here, but I think this got too many cartoony people in it to really be classed in this category, but they had such expressive faces and were sometimes uncomfortable to look at, and it made it really readable. Whereas something like Light Seers, where everybody has this like contemporary beauty standards look in their face and smoothness, it feels blank, so I don't really like it. And anyway, so I had various reasons I thought I wasn't into animal decks. But the Gentle Tarot, so this is my third version of this deck. I kept passing along and getting or receiving new ones. I kept passing along and then receiving new ones. This is my favorite card in this deck. It's a combination of humans and animals. The courts are all animals. A lot of the majors are animals. And so being a mixture, I was like, this is how I'll read animal decks. Get used to it. But I like this deck for its indigenous perspective. This deck is a deck that I know is reading from a shared worldview. And so it's easier to read it, I felt, than other animal decks. And the animals in this deck they look like animals are supposed to look, right? They do. And this is mostly going to focus on tarot decks, but I do have some oracles that I was like, these have to be mentioned. Okay, so I had passed on some animal decks I'd gotten and didn't use until Prairie Majestic Oracle. And this was an animal deck that I was like, yes, this fits. And I use it. I don't use Oracle a lot, but I do pull this out for myself at times. And it was the first one where I was like, yep, this is a animal Oracle deck that works for me. Okay. So I was really shrinking away from this whole animal deck deal when I reviewed the Great Lakes Tarot. I'm not going to say that this is an easy deck for me to use. I got a white marker to write the keywords that are on a line that go with these cards, but I got the wrong white marker. I need something with a much finer tip, something that will stand out brightly. They're great keywords. There are, especially amongst the fish, I sometimes don't recognize. And it's also slightly confusing because you will see that the number doesn't correspond to the image in the cards. And there is an awful lot of similarity between some cards. But I also like this deck. Here's the 6 of Cups and the 4 of Cups. So this is a plant and animal and human deck. And I think it is well done. Yeah, I need keywords on this, though. It's, you know, the humans appear in the pentacles. Birds are in the swords. Plants are wands. And cups are aquatic animals. And the majors are everything. This is a Hierophant. So, there we go. This is also a deck I use for myself. But it's a deck I want to, at some point, I guess, deep dive on a bit. All right. The Cat Marseille. Some of why I resisted animal decks was I was mad that the way to avoid having all white decks was animal decks. And in playing cards in Marseille, that's real, but starting to change. In tarot, it's getting a bit, like RWS is getting a bit easier, but like there's still a long ways to go. And I resisted animal decks because I was mad that it's the implied option to a lack of diversity. It's not an option to a lack of diversity. It's just something, it's avoiding it. But they've also liking some animal decks. So then I got Song of the Grandmothers gifted to me by Kara, who also gifted me this. And Marie, who gifted me one of my copies of this. This is the, I forget what it's called. It's the one that's like, what are we calling this size? It's the one that's on linen, folks. Blanking. And so this is plants and animals and nature. So I'm sort of including it in here. It's the key words that Cara writes that really that I like about these. This gives me a worldview I know, and I feel at home in the art. And so I know I'm at home in this art, even though it goes to various places. This is an oracle deck that I keep in a drawer that's easy to pull out and grab it. It's in a drawer that just has a few decks in it, so that they're actually easy to grab. You know, you're not like getting it out of a place where it's, so this isn't it's not on my table, but I can grab it in seconds space. And so I tend to keep it in the box kind of open. A lot of the time. So there we go. The Curious Cat Club deck. This was gifted to me by a friend. I really thought, it's by Stasha Burrington, and I really thought I wanted the Sassarabito Tarot, and I like it, but I don't use it as much as I thought. But I do use Stasha Burrington's Curious Cat Club deck. I put the naming keyword from the fold out of keywords onto here, because sometimes it just really helps. Sometimes, yeah, it's there and you get it. But doing this has allowed me to get to know a deck better, because I can learn it in practice, and that's helpful. And I can go into the picture still, so that's been useful on playing card style decks, especially where they don't always follow the same format. I find that useful. So then, when a friend told me they didn't like the cardstock on this deck, which is the Untamed Mysteries Tarot. So this is the Untamed Mysteries Tarot by the Wheel of Fortune Tarot. And it's one of those decks with plastic cardstock, so it's super slippery. And each suit has its own animal. So horses are pentacles. Whoa! Swords. We got the eagles. Bunny is in wands. And there is a koi fish in cups. And the eyeballs have a symbolism throughout the deck, as do the skeleton hands. And then the majors are all kinds of different animals and representations. This is the Wheel of Fortune. It's also very shiny. And this is a deck I've been using for personal readings. And I do find that having one animal per suit is also really, it's really helpful in getting to know it. But I also happen to really like the guidebook in this deck. So I use this for personal reads, where I'm going to grab and use this guidebook, likely, possibly, probably, kind of thing. So then I used this Magical Cats, which I don't use a lot, but it's also great for dream seeding. And so while it may not be used a lot, I will probably keep it for that. Okay. Because what has really aided dreams at night for my youngest is courage tea, so that they can find the courage to move through their dreams and take charge of them. So that's been working. The Four Covens Oracle, which is a playing card deck, I have just reviewed, as well as walkthrough, combined into one. So I did a walkthrough. It wasn't really a walkthrough. It was a pretty quick walkthrough. It was almost a flip through. And then I talked about using the deck for the week, throughout the week, 2 entries, middle and wrap up. And so I am going to have 3 videos edited by the end of today or tomorrow, I think. So I quite like this deck. The cards are animals for a familiar, a seer, and a priestess. And the guidebook has a whole fantasy world it creates of it. And it was excited about the guidebook, but it didn't work for me. This is a priestess. Here's a seer. But I'm liking the deck, and I chose some additional keywords to go with the one here that fits the main keyword and playing card definitions. And I've been quite enjoying it. And I also this week reviewed the Teddy Tarot Gold by Destiny. And so I reviewed it as well as the Smith Tiny. And I side-by-side walked through and commented on them. And then on using the Teddy Tarot this week. And I just used it as a small additional spread to what I would normally pull for a bit of, like, you know, something I need to know about it, flavor of it. Something people see in 2 different ways. And so it, was cute and adorable, and it worked really well. I really enjoy the teddies. I can always do without the inclusion of Christian symbolism, but I got through it. I like some of the additions, like there's an actual teddy bringing the cup. There is somebody there you're not paying attention to that you could pay attention to. So that was a weird choice for the Wheel of Fortune, because it looks like it should be the world. Although I like the deck's world choice. I don't imagine that's a deck that's going to be on my table all the time, but I think it'd be fun to bring out now and then. And it gave me a few days to really work with it and, have an opinion about it. And it's cute, and I'm going to keep it. And it felt like it was time to admit I have a growing collection of I don't like animal decks. Thanks a lot, Heather. So we have a quick talk about how I ought to show decks on my channel. Be that an unboxing, a walkthrough, a review, or showing decks in a VR. So I show decks according to what about it interests me, and what information I am looking for when I see other content. So my bias in how I present decks is what interests me. My bias in how I present decks is also my worldview. Yeah, I don't remember to tell anyone how much a deck costs. I don't always know. I almost never leave a link. My worldview as an indigenous is decidedly anti-capitalist, from a perspective of awareness, where I understand that any discussion about capitalism and classism also needs to be a discussion about white supremacy and racism, and it's all well and good to acknowledge where our disadvantages are under those systems. It's also good to acknowledge where privileges are and to actually have the full conversation. So, since I am coming at you from a worldview of, indigenism, I'm not going to remember all the aspects of the deck that are important to purchasing it. So there's that. If I was sent a deck to review on my YouTube channel, I would include those. Mostly when I'm sent decks is to review it for Indie Deck Review, and so it's on Indie Deck Review. And you get my more unfiltered opinions here. I am never upset with indie deck creators about the price of their decks. And I absolutely will show their decks even when they are out of print. And being an indigenous person, I'm fully aware that, inflation, capitalism, white supremacy impacts the cost of independently created decks, especially those produced by BIPOC folks, especially those produced by BIPOC folks for BIPOC folks, don't tend to sell as many copies. Usually, if they get funded, are in smaller print runs by folks at the very bottom of this capitalist colonial structure. And so I understand why they cost more. And I also understand that the reason decks are going up in price, even in mass market, is inflation. And that is also the capitalist colonial system, and not the independent fault of the community we have built based on our consumption. The tarot community is a community built on how we like to consume under capitalism, which comes to representation. How we like to consume under capitalism. Because I like to consume BIPOC decks created for BIPOC folks that are the majority BIPOC folks, or exclusively BIPOC folks in them. My options for those decks are smaller than if I was into all white decks all the time. So you will see out of print inexpensive decks on my channel. Interesting note. So my very niche Landback Tarot deck sold 320 copies. My profit at the end of paying for everything was just under $10,000. I made a profit of $27 per deck. Do not get pissy when creators and artists make a profit of $15, $20, $30 on a deck. What took me over a year to create made less than $1,000 a month for me. And when I say over a year, like I was putting in like 6 and more hours a day on that deck. It was a full-time job, and I made less than $1,000 a month. So the other thing that drives up prices is making environmental choices. So, when we are rightfully attacking capitalism, let's do it from an honest perspective where we are aware who we are standing on to be as high up on the ladder as we each individually are, especially on the crowded bottom sections. And aim a little higher than that at who we're attacking for this. It's the person one rung on a ladder higher than you is not the problem. But you might be if you aren't seeing who's, on the ladder below you. And seeing them in a way where you would have to acknowledge the full spectrum of how capitalism works and operates and what our personal biases are. We are fulfilling our ego for capitalism. We are purchasing our social circles via capitalism by creating an identity or ego by what we purchase. That's how it works. But capitalism at this point needs that to be really fast. We need to consume multiple identities all the time. That's why the memes about starter packs are funny, because they're true. We all have starter packs, multiple starter packs and expansion packs. And when we show our starter and expansion packs, we learn who our community is. Especially in the YouTube sections that cover collections and things we purchase. Tarot cards, books. I don't know if people do stamp collections still. It's kind of like there's a really good parallel to this. So when you're upset that you're participating in a process and your peers are participating in the same process and you're upset with them, that some parts of their participation, you don't feel you've measured up to. It's like being mad that you weren't higher up on the ladder. Or being mad that there's people higher than you on the ladder instead of being mad about the ladder. It's kind of like why those of us in the world majority dislike white feminism, because it's basically people arguing that they're in second place when they should be tied for first. Identity politics was useful until it got weaponized. By those at the top of the ladder. There's a privilege to being able to buy cheap decks that represent you. There's a privilege to being able to show the more new decks that represent you all the time, instead of constantly wanting to show you that, these are the decks that represent me. Had them for a bit. There's a few that come into the collection now and then. Had to pay a lot more for them. You can't have this conversation in parts, because then you're just fighting from the bias that there should be a top and you deserve equal space at the top.